When I was a kid, my parents gave me a Road Atlas of America. It was a big hardcover book full of beautiful pictures and maps of the country and of all 50 states. It had interesting information about population, industry, main crops, sights to see, and I loved that book. I spent a lot of time with it. I would measure out distances between cities and states and how long it would take me to drive. And I vowed that one day when I grew up, I would do that. I would take that drive, take a road trip around and see all of America. In the pursuing years, I've lost that book, but I never lost the dream. Now, many years later, it took me a long time, but I finally fulfilled that dream. Travel along with me on my road trip around America.
And this is another installment of my Medieval America series where I travel all around America. And in this video, we go to the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, so I took the long drive along the Florida coast, which is a beautiful drive, and ended up spending a night in I think a city in Alabama, and then eventually made my way to New Orleans. And here we are. We're looking at some footage of my drive into New Orleans. And well, this is part of my Medieval America series. There really isn't anything medieval that I saw in New Orleans, but there's a very good reason why I've stopped in New Orleans, in this city. That I actually spent, I think, 5 days here in a beautiful Art Deco hotel. But and I'll tell you a couple of stories while we drive around the French Quarter of the city. Tell you a couple of stories from my life if you'd like to hear. As to why it was very important for me to make sure that I spent some time in this beautiful city. And it isn't just for the party life, because I'm really not a partier. I drink very little. I didn't drink at all while I was there. It doesn't appeal to me that much. I'm a mead maker, and I occasionally have mead, but that's about it. But so, I was, travel for me is a big deal. When I was a preteen or a teen, I was given an atlas of the United States, and that kind of set off a whole wanderlust in me. And, I won't tell you about that in this video. I do have another video of one of my fish and chips vlogs where I talk about that and how the, travel was born in me. And I'll put a link to that in the upper right-hand corner of this video if you'd like to, watch and listen to that video about travel. But, so, after I get that atlas, it was about 10 years later that I I was watching a movie. See, I had a crush when I was a teen. I had a crush on an actress named Nastasia Kinski. So I watched all the movies, and I was pretty enamored with her. She was my crush, and she had this one movie come out called Cat People. It came out in 1982, and I loved that movie. And it all takes place in New Orleans. And so I was kind of double struck because, they talked about the food, and they walked around the city and the French Quarter and the music and just the ambiance and the very distinct flavor of New Orleans. So I was pretty struck by that, and I made it a goal to say to myself, you know what, I'm going to go to New Orleans one of these days and, experience the city. So, and I'm pretty serious about that. So, but, life got in the way. And it was about 10 years later that I finally had the opportunity and the time and the resources to say, I'm going to New Orleans. And I booked myself a vacation package. I think it was, 4 or 5 day vacation package in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And, I wasn't that interested in Mardi Gras per se. I was more interested in just visiting the city. And, and for something like that, I booked it like 2 years in advance and paid for it, and it was non-refundable because that's how serious New Orleans is when it comes to Mardi Gras. You just can't get a room. But I was really looking forward to that, so I got that all taken care of, and then come a week before it was time for me to leave to go on the vacation that I'd already paid for. A family emergency came up, a very serious family emergency came up, and I just couldn't go. It was an easy decision for me to make, but it happened. So, that was about 10 years later in the early 90s, maybe 92, somewhere around there, 93 maybe. So it was the initial thing of me wanting to travel, and then in the 70s, and then in the 80s, I saw the movie, and I was like, wow, I want to go to New Orleans. And then in the 90s, I finally made it happen. I thought I made it happen, and then it didn't happen. So it was very important for me to say, you know what, I'm finally going to get to New Orleans. So I finally now, all these years later, got to see New Orleans. And, and I really enjoyed, you know, everything about it. The food, the French Quarter, the music, just the overall feel of it. The hotel I stayed in was just the beautiful Art Deco hotel, and it was nice. And another thing that I did was, was kind of fun is, I did a little bit of research, which is pretty easy to do on IMDb, to find where they shot there's various shooting locations for the movie Cat People. And then I went to them, and I took pictures and video, and I'll show you some of that in this video. It was just kind of crazy after all these years, to say, wow, look at that. Here I am. This is the house that they lived in the movie, and here's where they went to. They had their first date at this little diner here, and they walked around the French Quarter here, and it was just kind of fun to do that. So, and I took video and pictures of that, and I'll show you some of that. So, that was an extra level of experience that I really enjoyed, to tie in that movie all these years later and to go see the actual places. And some of them were gone, demolished. Just after all these years, the cities change and things change, and some of the buildings were just no longer existed. So, but that's fun. Um, I enjoyed it. But that's New Orleans. I had a good time. Bourbon Street, the whole thing, the whole walking around and trying the food, which was wonderful. Very Louisiana type food. And I tried a bunch of different things that people recommended to me, like fried green tomatoes, right? And of course, the seafood is magnificent, and beignets. Who you have to have a beignets if you go to New Orleans. But so let me couple more things. Let's take a look here. Here is the house that they lived in the movie Cat People, and I got to really get a kick out of tracking it down and getting some video of it. And let's take a look at it from another angle. Right? It kind of grounds a movie in reality. And it's in a beautiful area of New Orleans. I just can't get over the architecture. It's very Louisiana, Cajun, New Orleans, with those balconies and the multi-story homes. And one more, let's take a look at one more thing from the movie. This is the little restaurant that they had their first date in, which I really get a kick out of. So that was fun, and there were other locations that I went to. But so this video is getting kind of long, but I couldn't not give you some of the sights and sounds of New Orleans. So what we're going to do is I'll give you some day footage of the music, and then we'll go on to Bourbon Street at night, and I'll give you some of that, and then I'll end it all with some pictures. So enjoy. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, our little trek around New Orleans. Um, I really enjoyed it. It was really wonderful for me to experience the city and to finally, after all these years, fulfill, the dream of going to New Orleans. I wanted to encourage you, if you have dreams in your life, go for it. Make it happen. It may take years, or in my case, decades, but you can really make anything happen that you want to. I'm having fun traveling around the country. I've got a lot more to go, a lot more videos. Having a lot of fun. I appreciate you watching my videos and following my channel, and maybe consider giving me some support. You can support me by visiting my website or by donating through PayPal or Patreon, and it's very much appreciated. I'm living a little bit of a different life, and I'm just lending a little bit of my flavor to the world. Uh, Thank you very much. Let's hit that subscribe button.